Forward to the cloud. All right. We're starting. Hello, everybody. Thank you for writing your attendee part of the documentation agenda. I don't have too much of an agenda myself today. I was mostly focused this week on getting the new RFC proposal process out the door. So I didn't have too much time to focus on documentation. Just to review from last week what our action items were. There was watching Ben Hall's talk. So maybe we could start with that. My own personal action items were to check out Hugo and try to port the styles onto the branch. I didn't get as far as porting styles, but I did get to use Hugo. And I would like us to, as a group, maybe try to create a documentation outline. I tried to do that on my own. I feel like I'd like to do that collaboratively. So that's sort of my report back on my two action items. Maybe we can go around the room and talk about what other people are up to. And then maybe talk about Ben Hall's talk. How's that sound? I'm doing it kind of loose today. Who else even had action items? Just me. All right, well, that was easy then. Who here has played with Hugo? Has anyone, I've really been enjoying it. Has anyone else had a chance to actually use it to make some docs?
I think Luke.
Yeah, I've worked on from maybe 8 to 10 projects at Hugo. I'm kind of an old hand, I suppose.
Nice. I had some questions around navigation structure and all of that. Is there a base theme that you think has good doc stuff built into it that we should kind of start from a structural point of view?
I've seen a couple that are a couple of themes that are kind of documentation specific. I've also built a fair number of navigation structures myself within it with the weird Go templating system. So if you'd like, just feel free to point me to somewhere and let me know what you're looking for, and we can potentially just spin something up from scratch pretty quick.
Yeah, my hope was something that just took whatever the content layout was and threw that into a navigational structure on the side. At least in the themes I was playing with, it seemed like you had to indicate which menu you wanted things to be in and stuff like that. I was wondering if there was a way to do it where you didn't have to do that.
Yeah, I can point you to some docs that show you how you can iterate over all of the different docs of a particular type or within a particular section, as it's called in Hugo. It's not the syntax is a little bit unintuitive, but it's not so bad once you get the hang of it.
It's a Go templates, right?
Sorry, what's that?
It's a Go templates, right?
Yeah, it uses Go's templating system.
Sweet. In general, it feels really nice to use. I really enjoy the live code. The live reloading works well. The CLI works well. It was super easy to install. So in general, it feels like the right tool for us if we can keep it to a simple, non-complicated Hugo site. So that made me happy. So I said I would do this last week, but this week I promise I'll try to get the site styles at some basic level ported over to something we can start iterating on. And Luke, I might reach out to you to help with some of that navigational structure and stuff once we've got the styles ported.
Do you want a hand with the style stuff? I don't know how it's set up, so I don't know if it's the type of thing that would be easy to split up. But I'm here if you want some help.
Yeah, I would be happy. If you want to, I'm looking to off-source tasks. If you're interested in just taking a shot at porting it, that would also be super great.
I can do that.
Awesome.
Just out of curiosity, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say maybe I'll set up a couple simple pages and then port it to those pages, like lorem ipsum type stuff.
Yeah, that would be great.
Cool. Okay.
I think we'll start with the theme that gives us the layout, because otherwise, I don't know, like if you port the styles, you would have to change it again.
Yeah, and also if we want to redesign it or something along those lines, now would probably be a good time to take a look at that. But maybe that's not one of the express goals. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like it doesn't need to be like a super complicated job, but just getting the basics of the theme ported, right? Like the color scheme, the logo, like that.
Yeah, but that's my point. Like, you port into what? You have to port it into the theme that actually supports the layout that we want, right? And so we have to fix.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, choosing a layout like first does seem like it would be a prerequisite.
I mean, do we want something more complicated than left-hand nav bar for docs? Like,
well, I mean, if we choose a theme.
There are a couple options with the navigation, right? One is you have a nav bar which represents sort of the page layout, the actual documents that you have in the source. And then the other thing that's always necessary is each document has its own internal structure. So on Jaeger website, for example, that internal structure is displayed on the right, whereas the file structure is displayed on the left. There are some themes that allow you to combine them. I kind of like those better because it's all in one place and it's just dynamically collapsing things.
Okay. Should we collect up a selection of like sites with layouts that we like and might want to copy, like the Jaeger?
Or ideally, themes, Hugo themes.
Yeah.
Like sample sites that we
Yeah,
like.
this is something that I've done a million times. So feel free to offsource this to me. I can get that. I can crank on that pretty quick. Just let me know. If there's a particular site that you like, I can make that happen in about an hour or so.
Yeah.
So Luke, you think that the choosing a theme should basically happen before we port the styles over?
Personally, I've actually never used themes. I've always built things from scratch, just because, and sort of mixed and matched bits and pieces of other sites that I'd like. So I'm not sure about what the current status of the site is. I can go and take a look and see if it'd be better to just do it by hand, or if a theme would be necessary at this point.
If you feel comfortable doing it by hand, I think that works well. Unless that makes it harder for other people to edit it.
No, I don't think it. No, I don't think it will. One question I have is, when it comes to the actual styling, are you working with basically like a predefined CSS file, or a set of files, or do you have, or are you like building from Sass or what?
Oh, you mean what's the current site doing?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm pretty sure it's building from Sass or something along those lines.
Yeah, I think that's what Gitbook was doing. I'm not sure about that though.
Yeah. I mean, it's more like we would just want to pick the colors almost. I'm looking at Jaeger's website right now. This looks perfect to me. We might want to do a different kind of like, I guess this is the Read the Docs site I'm looking at.
Yeah, it's MK Docs actually.
MK Docs is what this thing is?
That's what the tool is that we use.
Here, I'm posting this Gitter channel here. But this layout to me, I see what you're saying about the left hand and the right hand nav.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of like two sides nav because especially I don't think that website works well if you do mobile view.
Yeah.
I don't know about mobile view, but I kind of like having it on the right side, because then clicking those links won't be a page change. It's actually the content in the page. It kind of disambiguates nested links from intra or inter-page or current page links.
Yeah. especially if you have enough site structure like we might, that you will have a nested left nav as well, right? Because we'll probably have a couple sections with subsections.
Yeah, definitely. So like I just made the screen smaller on Jaeger site, and then the menus all go away altogether. And then the top menu collapses, but it only contains the file structure, not the, which might be for mobile okay. You just scroll the page quickly.
The top menu contains both.
It contains.
If you, yeah, it has like client libraries is the page I'm on, and then there's a little bullet list to the right. If you click that, you see the page structure.
It is totally modal, though. I could see people getting confused by this. But it's a start.
Well, what do you think of it, Luke? Have you gotten a chance to look at it?
Yeah, I'm having a look right now. I think that in my experience, it is pretty common if you have like the page-specific nav, whether it's on the right or somewhere else, for it to simply not exist on mobile. Because if you're looking at a nav for, like, let's say all the documentation or the whole site as a modal like that, then I mean, having multiple modals seems really, really tricky on mobile, and a little bit too much cognitive overhead. So I think that the approach that the Jaeger docs are taking seems to be the right one to me intuitively.
Yeah.
Okay. I now like it. So.
One suggestion for me is right now we're actually in the process of porting the Jaeger docs over to Hugo. I'm just waiting on some design assets from the Linux Foundation. I could actually design that in such a way that that there's a reusable theme that we could port over to the Open Tracing docs as well, if you guys are okay with sharing assets like that.
I think so. Yeah, it would be very good to have, because these projects are sort of very close anyway.
Yeah. And other than the fact that the Open Tracing website might be larger, I don't see why they would really need to be functionally all that different, right? They kind of have to deliver the same goods.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because with the themes, we could potentially, if the Open Tracing site has more, demanding needs of the theme, then we can build in bits and pieces that the Jaeger site simply doesn't use. That's super easy.
I like it.
I'm a big fan of not duplicating effort.
Yeah, and that way we get kind of twice the bang for the buck.
Yeah. Like.
Yeah, and there may be and there may be future projects as well that could benefit from it as well. So yeah, let's do it that way.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to say action item is create new Hugo site based on Jaeger's Hugo site. Is that basically what we're doing?
I wonder
Well, Jaeger's site right now is not Hugo, but yeah.
Jaeger's theme.
Clarification.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Jaeger site, we're in the process right now of moving it over. As soon as I get the design assets from Linux Foundation, that theme should be in place very soon. One question I do have is, it may be nice to just develop the theme in a separate repo, and then any project that needs it can just use it as like a Git submodule. So if you all have any suggestions about where that repo should live, I'm all ears.
It can probably live in the Open Tracing GitHub repository. That would probably make sense, right? Unless it's a CNCF asset and you want it to be a more generic, like CNCF doc theme or something.
I mean, we can always move it later. Let's just pick one place for now. By the way, I'm looking at Prometheus. Their theme is even nicer because they have some cute icons on the left side.
Cute icons.
Yeah.
Well, icons are.
But
not icons.
Just
some way.
Yeah. You need a better mascot too. We don't have enough cartoony mascots.
Yeah, I do. I kind of like the icons. If y'all have like a favorite icon set, you're into.
They're the
Nucleo or Font Awesome or whatever. I can make
those look like Font Awesome. Thank you. That's the word I was just grasping for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right, Julie.
So I wonder what tool they're using. Probably.
I recognize this looks like a Hugo theme, or at least a theme I saw in the Hugo.
I think they're using something with Ruby. They got like a gem file, NanoDoc maybe, or something like that.
Yeah.
I just found the repo right here. Hold one second.
I can't find it. What's the repo?
Prometheus /docs.
Docs, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something called Nanoc, Nanoc. I'm not familiar with it personally.
Yeah. I swear I saw a Hugo theme that looked kind of like this. I guess it doesn't look that similar now that I look at it closer. Yeah, Doc. It's like a variation on this thing. But,
yeah, I just like the fact that it's the main menu is also hierarchical. I don't know if we can do that in Jaeger. We might be able to, but we never tried. So, but I think with a new theme anyway, that's not hard to do.
yeah. So the left-hand menu here looks like what I would want. It's interesting. So what they did with the right-hand, like in-page menu, is it's actually flowed inline and doesn't scroll with the page. I don't know if you guys have noticed that.
Yeah, I think having it flush right and sort of fixed on wider screens and
Yeah.
off, just not there at all for mobile. Sounds like a pretty awesome scenario.
So Jaeger's better again.
Yeah.
Than Prometheus.
Yeah, I kind of like, I mean, I like some of the stylistic aspects of this site, but I think what the Read the Doc site that Jaeger has, like that layout, I think is a bit better. Or I like it a bit more.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, so basically, whenever I get those design assets from Linux Foundation, I should be able to, hopefully, maybe even by the meeting next Thursday, I might be able to have something in place that you all can have a look at and play around with. Great.
Look, design assets they have is only for the homepage, right? Not for the actual site, I believe.
Well, yeah, I talked with Alex Contini. She said that we're going to start with the homepage, and from there, like maybe move on to a documentation template for more just like standard pages. So I should check back in with her on that. I was hoping to maybe just use like whatever CSS I get from her for the index page might be enough to build out other page templates, but I suppose we'll have to wait on that.
Okay. So does it need to block the actual like structure work? Like if you want to port the existing Jaeger theme into Hugo, like with the menus, left and right and all these things, that's probably independent of the style, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's dependent on the style because I'm not sure what her. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to rely on her her CSS, basically like naming structure and how she puts together her classes and the class hierarchy. And unfortunately, there's not really a whole lot I can do that's of much use until I have that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can start writing documentation. The only thing I noticed in Hugo is there's a certain amount of metadata that goes into the pages. That would mean we might have to fuss with them a bit if we wrote under like some arbitrary theme and then tried to port it over. But that's probably not too big of a deal. Like you couldn't just copy and paste the markdown files over. You'd have to edit them at least a bit to work with whatever your new theme is, would be my guess.
Yeah, it's totally theme specific. What metadata is actually required for each page, and yeah, that's a total crapshoot. Yeah, hard to know in advance. But it probably shouldn't be too much work because at the moment I don't think there are like tons and tons of docs that would need to be gone through.
Cool. Cool. All right, and then it sounded like Joe was interested in helping with this. Joe, do you want to coordinate with Luke directly around being able to split out any work if that's feasible?
Yeah. Luke, sounds like you're well versed in these things, so let me know where I can help.
Okay, I'm gonna throw my email address right here into the chat window, and feel free to drop me a line.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, guys, I have to drop off. I have another meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get going in a second as well. But I do want to mention the syntax highlighting. I don't know if we want to stick with the Chroma syntax highlighting or if we want to explore using something that's based on TextMate grammars. I've had a really good experience with it. It's kind of some work to set up, but then once it's working, it's pretty nice, I think.
Is it dynamic, like via JavaScript?
Nope. It's the way I have it set up for my personal site is it's all statically generated.
That I like.
But I don't think we
That's
have
pretty typical.
much room in Hugo with the because Hugo doesn't really support plugins, right?
Well, I think I don't know if it supports plugins, but it does support a CLI option for using Pigment's Classic. So we might be able to commandeer that and I can ape the interface of Pigments and then generate the markup.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, whatever we're using is something where when people are writing content, they don't have to think about it, and it just gets compiled automatically. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be that would be implicit in this path.
It seems like
it would basically be a pretty condoned path by Hugo. Just it would be calling a different binary than the one they're expecting.
I guess from my perspective, it strikes me as something like if we ended up using languages that don't have existing highlighters, it might make more sense. So you mentioned JSX in that GitHub thread, but I don't know. I guess that my gut feeling is it seems like a lot of extra work right now to address a problem that we don't really have yet.
I mean, it's, I think, a nice to have. It's like a luxury. So I definitely see where you're coming from. I'm kind of fastidious about syntax highlighting, so that's why I was interested in it. So if we're of the opinion that it's not really necessary, then no problem.
It just seems like it's not a blocker, right? Like,
well, definitely it's not a blocker.
We could swap these out later, and we wouldn't have to rewrite our content. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe one path would be we stick with the Hugo default for now, and the second we run into a problem with that and that proves insufficient, we can give you a call and you can be Johnny on the spot.
Sounds good.
With a new thing.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, cool.
Although you guys really, I'm just going to do this last pitch. It's really nice over here on the TextMate grammar side. Okay, that's all. Cool. Sweet. Sounds good.
Great.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, I think that's the big main thing. I feel like this was good. We've got 30 minutes left. I think some people have to hop off. The only thing I was interested in getting kickstarted is just kind of the table of contents of what content we thought we really needed. I started poking at that and felt like almost maybe like a collaborative jam session would be helpful for me at least, to figure out what a good basic structure should be for the documentation.
Is that something we could do in the weekly Thursday meeting next week, maybe?
Yeah. We could do it then if you like. We could look a little bit at it now if you guys have time. Otherwise, we can do it next week. Up to you.
I can totally look now. This has been one of those weeks where I have too many projects going on, both professionally and personally, and they all are like on fire right now.
Yeah. Okay. So.
But since you got me for a half an hour.
Right. Let's just do it.
Make it count.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got this doc.
This is the link you've got in the open
Yeah.
tracing documentation. Yeah.
So
okay.
hopefully everyone has an editable link to this thing. This was just, had been, I don't know, some blue sky session in that had occurred previously. I wasn't part of it. And it's sort of like getting started, and then getting started for Go, which was like, I think the idea there being like there's a getting started guide per language, an application developer guide that's kind of generic, and then one per language, and then a FAQ. And I was sort of like, I don't know, I felt like my head started spinning a little bit. I was like, is this how we want it to go? And I sort of wanted to just maybe clean room, like, what do we think we need, regardless of what's already been written down so far. Okay, so I'm making a new thing here called content.
Well, we definitely want to have those topics of what is tracing, you know, what is a span, wherever they end up happening. I think those are all things we were talking about the other day, that like people that are coming in just need to have those concepts kind of straight in their heads.
Yeah, totally agree. Like, concepts are absolutely essential. And I can show you something I did on another site really quick for concepts.
Oop,
Did we lose you?
I just got to find a link here.
Okay. We just lost your audio for a minute. We weren't sure if we lost you completely.
Oh, yeah, I'm just muting and unmuting. Okay, so if you go to that page that I just put in the chat there, and if you click on any word that's in purple, you'll notice that there's a pop-up that comes up. And this, I think, so this was a site I designed from scratch, and and this is a project with like tons and tons of concepts. And so there were so many concepts in this project that I knew that there was going to need to be some way for there to be basically like an in-page dictionary on every single page. So so that's something that'd be really easy to implement in the open tracing docs if you all would like. Do you see what I'm referring to?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think we probably still are going to need some sort of architecture and conceptual stuff too, but that's a nice like extra if you can't remember or if you're coming in from somewhere else, because it still like to have that every page is page one. You never know what page people are going to land on.
Oh yeah, totally agreed, Julie. And in fact, we could expand like those little modals that pop up. We could include links in there. We can include potentially links to the relevant section in the main concepts architecture doc, etc. Yeah, that's just more of a little add-on. So totally agree.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah. I could totally see that being a nice thing, especially if it automatically sprinkled itself over everything, rather than having to manually tag each word. Okay, I have some, I'll find them later. I have some talks where I kind of give some of this like language structure around like, what's a, diagramming out, what's a span context, all of that kind of stuff. That's definitely some content I could draft this coming week. Is that basic description of all of the language, or the sort of basic mental model.
Yeah.
Which I think is, it's like its own section or something. And then there's a sort of deep dive maybe into, what is it like?
Sorry, you just cut out for about 30 seconds there.
Oh, sweet. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, so there's this concept, tracing, distributed tracing, open tracing, and then there's something that's like actually digging into the parts of open tracing, like span context, inject, extract, and describing all of those concepts at a high level. I wasn't sure how. So, what is? So it's like. Maybe it's that these things are nested. And then there's tags and logs. I don't know if we talk about tags and logs in the context of spans, maybe. Yeah, operation name, tags, logs. Baggage. That might be it. Okay. So that's what is open tracing.
I'm kind of trying to skim through what we've already got here.
Hell world. Love it.
Well, I don't have a whole lot of experience writing API docs, but one of the things that people keep coming back and telling me is that the thing that they don't get out of generated docs is how to get their system set up and authenticated. So that basic, like, get me over the hump of connecting the systems, and then like all the rest of the stuff is easy, but a lot of times like the how do I get started is just a big barrier.
Yeah. And in our case, it's this trick of like, this is instrumentation in your code, right? So you're trying to get started with this big concept, but you need to have a code base, and not just one code base, but probably like two, right? You need to have at least two things talking to each other for this to make sense.
Yep.
And none of those things should be the browser, because actually browser support's not great for a lot of tracers right now.
I'm sort of skimming through the existing doc right now. There's a right after spans, we're talking about relationships. Is that a concept that we need to put in there under our little list here?
Yes, references.
Because I'll admit I'm probably not as deep into this as I should be. So.
Yeah.
I'm just skimming through here to see what we got.
And it's actually, instead of just spans, it's like traces and spans.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of one. A trace is just a bunch of spans that reference each other. So
yeah,
kind of one concept. And then the tracer is a separate concept.
And then in here, in instrumenting frameworks, filters, interceptors. Talking about those topics.
Yeah. And I almost...
Is that something people should be familiar with when they come in, or is that something we're going to need to explain?
So I think there needs to be a cookbook, not about like, here's how you instrument a framework.
Yeah.
I would sort of separate it out into this cookbook thing of like all the things the basic situations you might find yourself in. Like, how do you extract a span context from an HTTP header? And just having examples of that in every language. how to pass a span from one thread to another. That's a concept. What else do we have on that front? So there's a lot of cookbooky things, and then there could be a sort of generalized, like, how do you instrument your system? Telling people that, like, the big thing about open tracing is getting all of this instrumentation into these frameworks and libraries, and that sort of step one when you go to instrument your system is you should install OSS instrumentation for all of your OSS components before you start instrumenting your application code. Because in other words, without actually writing any instrumentation, you should be able to just install existing plugins, like,
Yep.
and then see a trace. And so that's like a general concept I think we want to give people of, like, step one, install plugins. Step two, install like a service mesh or your load balancer, make that thing be open tracing compliant. And then step three, start actually instrumenting your code. But the more people understand that they can just start seeing traces without actually having to write instrumentation, I think the faster they'll be able to get up and running with open tracing.
Yep, so I've got that down. If you scroll down under the task, tell me if I captured that correctly.
Yeah, so I might say it's like, come on. Tracing step by step. Step one. Something like that.
Yeah.
That could maybe be part of the getting started guide. Well, no, I take that back. The getting started, there's like a getting started guide, which I think is like, okay, so you want to do this. Here's like, pick your language. There's a demo app in that language that will walk you through it, right? Like the getting started guide is something along those lines.
Yeah.
Or like a small code tutorial of like, here's how you would write some of this instrumentation code. But it's sort of like getting your feet wet. And then there's a sort of like, it's like, there's like getting started with open tracing. And then
getting started for users and getting started for developers? Are there two different?
Yeah, it's like getting started with open tracing, like intro to open tracing. And then there's like getting started with instrumenting your actual system. Like, okay, you're sold on this concept. You want to do it now for your real system. What's the step-by-step approach for that? Which isn't quite getting started, right? Getting started is like, in 30 minutes want to get my feet wet with this thing.
Yeah, so basically, so getting started can sort of fork out into a getting started for application side folk, and then getting started for more like administrative operations folk.
Yeah. Or I don't know if they're different people. It's more just like different stages, right? Like like there has to be some, and I don't know if we would call it getting started, but there's like these sort of tutorial process of some way to, without having to go mess with some big system, have some nice quick way to quickly be able to get in a place where you're writing some open tracing instrumentation and seeing it in a tracer so that you understand what all these pieces are.
Yeah, I totally agree that getting started should be for everyone, that should be an entry point that, you know, no matter who you are and no matter where you're coming at this from, maybe you're even like maybe you're like a CTO that's not actually going to build anything, but just wants to play around and be convinced. I think getting started should serve that person as well.
Yeah.
So sort of the executive white paper. Here's what it is. Here's where you need it.
Yeah, we definitely need something like that. And then the next step past that is like, here's how you can go play with it quickly. And then the next step past that is like, okay, here is the actual step-by-step approach to taking your big honking production system and moving it over.
Yeah.
Yeah, Julie, I like that description. I guess to me, a good getting started is like, it's like a hands-on white paper is how I would describe it.
Nice.
Was I right in thinking that that there is an important development versus operations distinction in play here that we'll need to be attentive to, or less so than in some other systems?
I don't think there's too much of that. I think it's, yeah, I don't find. The only way operations people tend to get involved in open tracing, because it's a language level thing, is being able to, maybe sometimes they will install some of these plugins or want to configure some of this service mesh stuff. But they tend not to be too involved. It's mostly developers.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of talk about DevOps stuff. That's why I had operations in there.
Yeah.
DevOps is like a current buzzword.
Yeah. So I don't know. I get salty about the only thing I get salty about is then when I see companies advertising a DevOps role, which is like that.
Yes.
The whole point was that you just relabeled system administrator. Like we now just call system administrators and application developers, DevOps engineers, and full stack engineers. We just use the labels.
I don't know. The company I worked at about a year and a half ago, our DevOps guy did a lot of engineering stuff.
Yeah. It means, the term DevOps means you don't have a separation between the two roles. It's just your engineers who are writing the code also have to deploy and manage it and be stuck on the beeper. So it's like when a company then says like, now we're going to have like a DevOps role for the people who just operate it and have the beeper, and then the application developers who write the code and don't have to worry about the beeper, then you're like not doing DevOps. Anyways, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I
rant over.
I tend to see everything through the focus of the one company I was at, which was pretty much I would say a cloud native. They were a startup. They were a couple years old. Everything they were doing was microservices. And he was writing code, like he was writing reports and tying stuff together, but he was also, if something went down, he was the guy on the beeper.
Yeah. System administrators can write code. Every sysadmin I've ever worked with could hack a script together when they had to. Anyways.
Yeah. No, but a lot of sysadmins I've worked with have been more sort of push the button and watch the graphs type guys. This guy was doing a lot more coding than I'd seen usually in a sysadmin.
Yeah. All right. Back on track here. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. It's intro to open tracing. Getting started. Yeah. My paper executive overview, and And I wonder how this intro to open tracing stuff we're talking about, how is that? We've also got these like this concepts section.
I think that's probably tie into it right there.
Like they're the same thing, basically.
Yeah.
One question I have, and this is out of pure ignorance, but when you're how do I say this? So there are a bunch of different supported tracers, one of which is Jaeger, and there are a bunch of other ones, Zipkin, a couple others. To what extent would developers need to care about that? I mean, care about which tracer they're using and shipping things out to.
Yeah, we should definitely have a section on that. I would try to avoid having that be one that really did a hard compare and contrast against the tracer options out there. Just
oh yeah, this would be just from a purely practical perspective.
I think the main idea is hammering home that you just all of this instrumentation works and it's all the same no matter which tracer you plug in. So picking a tracer has much more to do with your operations. That's sort of where the operations people come in, right? Because which tracer you're using has to do with how you're deploying it and configuring it. And in my opinion, a lot more to do with load, how are you running your own Jaeger instance and then scaling that and operating it and handling whatever load is coming in off of there versus going with a SaaS solution like Datadog where they're doing that for you. So that's like difference number one. Difference number two is what kind of information you actually can get out of these systems is tracer dependent. Some tracers do upfront sampling, for example, and they can give you certain kinds of statistical information, but they're limited in other ways. And some other systems don't do upfront sampling and hoover up all of the data, and those may let you do other kinds of analysis at the cost of having to store all the data somewhere. So there's just these sort of trade-offs that can occur there.
Yeah, it seems like maybe a kind of. Oh,
sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, seems like maybe a pretty tricky thing to navigate because on the one hand, you don't just want to tell users like, well, you're on your own. Whatever tracer you happen to be using, go read those docs and figure it out. But then there comes the maintainability question, which is where do you want to be herding all these cats at the same time and trying to keep up with those systems in the open tracing docs? Could be a tricky set of issues to navigate, which kind of arises in every project nowadays, that everything's all integrated and has a million connectors and integrations. It's just kind of the nature of the beast now, but maybe that's a bridge we can cross when we come to it.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
The sort of way I like to approach when there's no right answer is just to present the list of questions you should be asking.
Yeah.
Sort of like, what do you want to collect? What's your load? Are you cloud? Are you going to be, whatever the relevant sort of variables are. And then once they've answered those questions, because really it's always about what do I need to meet my requirements, and people don't think about their requirements. They're just like, oh, we need tracing. So it's that like, what are the variables that are going to affect what you choose, and then let them go off and make the choice. But at least you've given them that framework of these are the things you should be looking at. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And I think a basic, there could be a basic overview of like tracers tend to fall into these camps of what they do. And then have people be like, but the big distinction we give people is there are some open source tracers that you can run yourself. So if you're just starting, here's a list of open source tracers that we recommend or are open tracing community members. And then if you don't want to run it yourself and want to pay someone to run it for you, there's a list of SaaS vendors who will also do that for you. Here's that list of the official SaaS vendors. And that's probably, you know, as close as we can come.
Yeah, so I just added like a brief little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this actually, I think there's actually a section almost that this links to. This is sort of like choosing a tracer, but I think then there's like the sort of list of like supported tracers.
Yeah, there is a supported tracers list. That's what I was looking at right now.
That's like a separate page, and we should probably have that on the new site as well. That can just link over, and that can be organized into OSS and SaaS is kind of two separate lists.
Yeah.
Cool. And yeah, and we really, you know, we were discussing based on like Ben's talk and stuff that we should focus on this content first, right? Like there's the more in the weeds content around like the cookbook and everything. But really this like introductory material should be solid. And that's really the thing we want to get.
Well, and I think Yuri brought that up the last talk too, about that people just don't understand what open tracing is. Like they're like, I want to install open tracing and download it. Or maybe it was you that was saying that. And he's like, no, it's not.
It's not how it works.
There's not a zip file.
So what is tracing? What is distributed tracing? That's not a thing. We're just going to talk about what is tracing. There's no such thing as non-distributed tracing. Like,
okay.
There is, I guess, but let's just like carry on.
Oh yeah, go for it. I have one question really quick, and this is a little bit of a non sequitur, but I think technical diagrams are like extremely important, and it's something that I've been focusing on a lot in the last year or so. Are there any particularly blessed tools that you all like, or something like that? Because I think that having stylistic continuity across diagrams and making sure that they're, they look nice or aesthetically appealing, so on and so forth, is really important. And to me, that's one of the things that sets apart, decent documentation pages from like world-class docs. So I have a couple things that I use that I like, but I'm open to whatever.
What have you been using? Just because I'm curious.
I like Lucidchart. It's in browser.
That's what we used at my last company. And I think it's what we're going to be using at Red Hat too. So.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I mean, another one is I forget what it's called. It's called like Google Draw or Google Drawings. That's a nice one because it's free and it's sort of good enough. But yeah,
it's good enough. It's not great.
That's what's baked into docs and in the slides and all their other things, I think. And yeah,
right.
I have survived with it, but I would use the word survived.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Well, with Lucidchart, I think it's pretty cheap for small teams. Like I think the issue is just that one of the barriers is that the free plan is not super great. So if there was a way, I'm not sure who would sign that check or whatever, but that's sort of a separate logistical issue we can talk about later.
Yeah. The only thing I would say, the one issue with the Google Draw tool, if I recall, is there's no project structure. So you can go make a diagram in it and it's fine. But if you want to have some kind of shared environment where when anyone goes to make a new diagram, they're building it out of the same building blocks and color palette and stuff, unless there's like a fancy version of it I never saw. Like,
yeah, Lucidchart unfortunately does not have color palettes, which I think is so weird. But yeah, that's been a sticking point for my company as well.
So yeah, I would say if the thing that I would be looking for if we were going to shell out any money for something would be if it, you can like have all, so it's like everything has the same color theme, all the bezels are automatically the same size, whatever, like style unification you're going for. Like hopefully the tool would support better than just like cloning the same, just taking an existing thing and making a copy of it and tweaking it, which is what we would do otherwise.
Yeah, what you're talking about, I'm not sure that exists currently, unfortunately. but I would be quite pleased to be wrong.
I've been using, so for that style, a tool called OmniGraffle, but it's like an offline tool and would be expensive or something. I think it costs money.
Yeah, I have OmniGraffle myself, so I'd be fine with that, but up to you.
Right. Yeah, but that's like sort of what I was saying. It has like templates and themes, and you could then go modify that base template, and then all your stuff updates. It's probably overkill for what we need. But. Okay, so either Lucidchart or Google Docs, and let's see. So. Okay. I will look into that.
It is lunchtime and my belly wants to be fed.
All right. This was a good meeting. I feel forward progress was made. I'm very satisfied.
I did too.
Totally agree.
And we seem to be at a good stopping point, so I didn't want to get rolling again. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. All right, y'all. I'll see you on the Gitters.
Okay, yeah, catch you later.
Yep. Thanks so much.
Ciao.